Hans, I want to kick it off with you. Take a listen to this soundbite from Vice President Kamala Harris as she's talking about what else can be done when it comes to police reform. Take a listen.
We also know this executive order is no substitute for legislation, nor does it accomplish everything we know must be done. The President and I call on the United States Senate to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and once again, we vow that we will do everything in our power to protect public safety, to support law enforcement, and to address this issue of racial injustice wherever it exists.
I guess my question is, Hans, is this an issue that can be legislated? Can it be corrected with new rules and regulations? And if so, does this executive order go far enough?
So, hi, Tiffany. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the question. And first, I want to say to the Floyd family, 2 years later, I still can't imagine what that loss is like, that public loss, and my heart still goes out to them. And to your question, you know, this is a complicated problem with multiple solutions. We can't get very far without some federal action and ultimately some state action and ultimately also some hyper-local action. So all of it needs to happen. I do think that there's a significant starting point when we do a better job at the federal level to really set the tone, set some enticements via funding to really bring us to where we need to be. But the philosophical changes that need to happen also need to be present, and the general structures that exist currently also need to be completely reimagined. So can we totally legislate it away? Probably not at the federal level, but that's who needs to lead, set the tone, have states follow, have municipalities follow, and really help us understand how we can get to a different system that's more responsive to what communities have been calling for 2 years and beyond.
Brittany, I want to play a disturbing video. I want to warn our viewers this is disturbing. It's footage of a chase between a police officer and someone who was on a dirt bike, and he extended his taser, and you'll see what happens. Take a look.
Surveillance video showing 26-year-old Gian Barreto covered in flames. His attorneys, who provided the video from Wawa to NBC, say he was cooked alive. Osceola County Sheriff Marco Lopez saying the February 27th incident started when 911 callers reported 2 men were driving dirt bikes aggressively and flashing guns at other drivers. A law enforcement helicopter followed, and it was at the Wawa gas station that deputies caught up with Barreto, whose bike they say matched the description of one of the suspects.
I look at this, Brittany, and I say, I don't know an executive order or legislation that can address that level of abuse. This man was burned, cooked alive, essentially, like you heard. What's your thought? Is this an issue that can be legislated?
You know, I have to agree with you, Tiffany, that there are some things that clearly cannot be legislated. There are things that cannot be reformed. And I think we have to really reckon with the kind of hero worship we've engaged in around policing in America. I think, sadly, Uvalde is a terrible and tragic example of just how not incompetent, but problematic the entire institution is. As I said before break, if the police kill, tase, and maim unarmed people because they feared for their lives, and they won't stop armed people from slaughtering children, then clearly the institution itself is not sound. Uvalde provides 40% of their municipal budget to policing, and I'm very sure that being tackled and handcuffed while you're trying to go in and rescue your own children is not what the residents of that town paid for. It's certainly not what taxpayers across the country think they're paying for. Police have actually spent many years and a lot of money actually litigating the fact that they do not have to endanger their lives if they don't want to, which is fine. That's a challenging thing to ask of anybody. But what that means is that we should stop telling people that's what they do. We should stop leading with this serve and protect idea, because that's frankly not often how they function. We have to recognize that there is a culture in media and in television and in film that has created this incontrovertible narrative that police are perfect and they are heroes and everything they do is done with authority that should be respected without question, instead of the fact that we can look at other countries and recognize that at the very least disarming police, demilitarizing police, but really thinking creatively about how we abolish policing as we know it and really get to the meat of public safety. That's what our communities deserve. It's not just about what we take away when we talk about abolition. It's about what we create in terms of creating healthy communities and healthy solutions. But the institution of policing has far too long convinced us that they are here to serve and protect us, when so often what they're always doing is actually enforcing the will of the state, and they're terrorizing often Black and brown people in order to do that.
Like we just saw on that video, that disturbing video. Hans, before we go, because I know this is something that you've worked intimately on, there was some reporting that Biden's EO leaked, his executive order leaked, and law enforcement was not happy with some of the things. They didn't like draft references to systemic racism. They didn't like that federal grant money police departments receive would be required to submit records and consult it when they're hiring new officers. I mean, we're asking the problem to solve the problem.
That's correct.
Is that, when I heard that, I thought, who gives sugar, honey, iced tea if law enforcement was offended at what this White House put in the executive order? Your thoughts?
So I think it's important to get all perspectives. But with the problem that I think you're highlighting very appropriately is whose perspective is centered. Whose perspective are we thinking needs to be the final decision maker that we use as the ultimate scale of what is right and wrong in any action? And what's notably missing is the community members of the community that know all too well the impact of law enforcement on their lives, on Black communities, and asking them, what about this executive order offends you or pleases you, and leading with those answers. And while also perhaps in understanding or at least listening to law enforcement so we have those perspectives, but the idea that those folks are the ones that are helping to drive an order, or that we need to keep them happy or complacent, is certainly a problem. And I think that over the last 2 years, what we've learned is that the communities have the power, they have the voice, they have the intelligence. We have to listen to them and center their voice in all of our actions downstream.